this is Svetlana from Cosplay and welcome to another cosplay crafting adventure. And today I'm going to show you something I always wanted to build. Today I'm going to build a functional bow out of simple PVC pipes and just some EVA foam. And in addition to that, I'm also creating a magical light up arrow. Exciting, right? In fact, this is a collaboration with Empires and Puzzles and I'm super excited because they asked me to create anything from the game and they have like over 400 amazingly designed heroes, and I actually picked the winged goddess Athena with her blue golden bow because I always wanted to make a bow and she's super gorgeous as well. And if you never heard about Empires and Puzzles Match 3 RPG before, it's a free, chill, mobile game with RPG, base building and puzzle battle elements. It's available for iOS and Android and, as I said, has over 400 amazing looking heroes. I'm super happy they are supporting our channel. To play the game, check out the link in the video description. And now, let's start crafting! As always, every prop starts with a blueprint. Since I wanted my bow to actually shoot arrows though, Benny first had to adjust the shape of the reference in Photoshop. Can you see the difference? Okay, next he jumped into Illustrator and began drawing me the rough pattern. A lot of this was actually just guessing, but getting a rough outline would be enough for me to work with. After a couple of hours, this was the result. I was super excited to finally start crafting, but first everything had to be printed out. Yay! I taped everything together, cut it out and actually made 3 different bow sizes this way. I ended up going with the middle option as it looked the best to me. After checking out a lot of tutorials online, I decided to make my bow out of strong, rigid, non-plasticized PVC pipes. These can be easily heat-shaped without releasing toxic fumes and withstand quite some force. If you want to do something similar, I highly recommend you to check your own materials properly and wear protection if you are unsure. As my pipes were a little bit too long, I measured my bow along the curve, cut them to the right length and began heating them up carefully. Once the material got soft enough, I pressed it down with quite some force. See, got a nice squeeze. Afterwards, I heated up the end again and curved it even more with a tape roll. I didn't want to turn this into a real weapon though, so instead of keeping it straight, I curved it almost to its final shape already. This would minimize the tension a lot. See, half of the bow actually could be already bent, even though it probably wouldn't shoot very far. Next, I had to do the other side and make sure both parts of the bow would look symmetrical. To connect both sides, I then glued in a thinner pipe in the middle. It moves! Now, to attach the string, I sanded in a little gap, grabbed a simple cord and made a loop around the pipe. And with a little bit of tension, the whole construction worked! Yay! The bow was obviously very weak, but as I said, I wanted to have it only semi-functional. Still, this is so cool! Well, let's add all the design elements next. The very first step here was to cover the pipe as well as some EVA foam with contact cement and give the whole thing some volume. The wrapping part is always a little bit tricky and getting a nice seam needs some extra effort. My Dremel was super helpful to smooth out the gluing lines and shape the ends of the bow. And yes, this step is super dusty, even though I always send over a vacuum hose. Now, to make everything a little bit more interesting, I decided to add some LEDs. As you can see, there are some small gemstones on the sides of the bow. I soldered together a few lights and wires and made a simple parallel connection with 6 LEDs. Please don't judge my soldering though, I did this super sloppy. As long as it works, okay? So, this was the circuit for one half of the bow. Then I cut in some holes and gaps into the foam and made some space for the wires all along the bow. Squeezed all the electronics in, closed the cuts again, added a little bit of foam, and as you can see, it works! Now the real detail work began and it involved a lot of foam and a lot of sanding. I mostly used painter's tape to draw on some patterns for additional layers, and it was pretty straightforward to get all the shapes right this way. A final paper pattern helped me to test everything first, and then I finally traced this template on 5mm high density EVA foam. As always, I'm working here with a simple utility knife and contact cement. You can find all tools and materials linked in the video description. After I sanded the edges a bit, I glued on the first part onto the bow. And this is how I created pretty much all the other details as well. It took some time, but it was always just making a pattern, fixing a bit here and there, cutting it out, tracing it onto foam, dremeling the edges, and gluing them on. So, and this is how the bow looked so far. As you can see, the foam moved perfectly with the pipe inside, and I think I got pretty close to the reference. I used mostly high density EVA foam for my details, as it sands a lot better. However, this step was still super exhausting, and I was super happy once I was done with all parts. Gluing them on was actually the most exciting step. I absolutely loved seeing how everything came together. For the last few details, I had to finish the electronic part though. I secured the LEDs first with hot glue, covered them then with white wobbler for better diffusion, and then added the foam element on top. Finally, I only had to add some last 2mm foam elements here and there. Even though those details were simple, they would actually make the overall look much more interesting. Well, and this was the final foam build. It took me 3 days in total to shape the PVC pipe bow, sculpt the black base, and add all the grey elements on top. Even though I didn't have much time, I was super happy with the result. Next up, priming and painting. To keep everything flexible, Benny grabbed some flex bond and applied around 5 layers all over the foam. This brush-on primer smoothed out the sanded areas and made everything nice and shiny, ready for paint. For this step, Benny grabbed a few airbrush colors from Vallejo. Seeing a prop come to life like this is always super exciting. First, he began applying all the blue to the bow. As you can see, he had already taped off the LED parts here as well. Then he added some shadow around the edges. Once done, he used more masking tape to cover the finished areas. This step is super tedious, but necessary if you are using different airbrush colors. Next, all the white. Benny again covered all areas with paint, added here and there darker shadows, and covered the section with tape as well. As you can see, he used a ton of masking tape. Finally, the gold. To get this covering quickly, he started with a yellow base color and then added gold on top afterwards. Then some shadows to make the golden paint really pop. Once done with all the painting, it was finally time for the best part, peeling off the tape. Seeing all the colors finally combined is always super rewarding, and I love the combination of gold, blue and white. The edges obviously didn't turn out perfectly, so Benny still had to do some cleanups with a thin brush. But I promise, this was the last painting step. Last but not least, he used some satin glossy spray varnish and sealed the finished paint job. I actually hid my battery and switch under a painted piece of wobbler and wrapped some fabric around it. Now for the gemstones, Benny quickly 3D modeled and printed some half spheres, which he then sanded and primed and covered with glossy spray varnish to make them super shiny. These were then glued on and placed inside a little box. He then mixed a 2-part silicone and created a mold of them. With this, he then could mix up a 2-part clear resin, add some blue dye, and cast the gems with additional glitter. A lighter works perfectly to get rid of the bubbles by the way. After around 24 hours of curing, the gemstones were done. And as you can see, they turned out super pretty. Now I just stick them on with super glue and my bow got its last details. They turned out just amazing. Well, last but not least, the string. I bought a thick nylon thread since I wanted to make it more visible. And no, I don't know how to do a proper bow loop, but this is also not a real bow, so I don't really care. I just added the golden tips at both ends, and Athena's bow from Empires and Puzzles was finally done. Before I can show you the final result though, I decided to add a little fun thing on top. I actually always wanted to make a magical arrow for a project. And even though there is no arrow in the original reference, this would be the perfect opportunity. I still had some leftover electronics and LED foam, so I rolled a thin LED strip into 2mm foam, grabbed a plexiglass pipe that I diffused with sanding paper, adjusted a little bit here and there, and squeezed the strip into it. The end had to get through this hole though. Afterwards, I cut out a stripe of 2mm EVA foam, covered the foam and the plexiglass pipe with contact cement, and wrapped the base of the arrow into an additional diffusing layer. So far for the base. Next up, I glued on a foam tip, secured the LED strip along its edges, and covered it with an additional layer of foam on both sides. Just had to press everything together, add some texture with my Dremel, and attach the fletching. Benny finally primed it with Flex Bond, applied a simple paint job with an airbrush, and the magical light up arrow was done. Now let's plug in my professionally wrapped circuit, and oh my god, it turned out so cool. I'm so happy it actually worked out. I think it looks super awesome with Athena's bow, and I'm incredibly proud how everything turned out. What do you think? Pretty fancy, right? And it moves as well, just like a real bow. I mean, it's a real bow, right? Only one way to find out: a shooting test. As I mentioned at the beginning, it does not have so much tension though. Still, I was super curious. And as you can see, it actually shoots. The arrows fly only for around 5 meters, but I tried my best to hit a balloon. It's really hard to aim with this thing. Guess I need some more practice. Still, I think that's not too bad for a self-made bow and someone who never did archery. So thanks so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this little fun build here. As I said, I'm actually really proud. I also love my light up arrow as well, and I cannot believe that it took me actually 19 years to finally build a semi-functional bow out of PVC pipes and EVA foam. I think this was a really cool project, and if you have any questions, just as always leave me a comment down below. And finally, thanks so much to Empires and Puzzles for this really cool collaboration. I now really hope I can finish the whole costume and bring the glorious winged goddess Athena to life, and also make wings the very first time after 19 years of cosplay crafting. So if you want to support the project and want to see the whole costume, check out the link in the video description down below, because, you know, like, if this runs well, maybe they will also ask me to create the whole costume. This would be really cool. And last but not least, again, to support our channel, please like and subscribe, hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos, and also leave us a comment, leave us some feedback, leave us some questions, and if you don't know what to write, just write down Corgi and join the Corgi squad. And now, see you very soon, and bye-bye. Super Patreons, thanks so much for supporting our channel. And these are /Cosplay, Emma, Ethan Makes, Joachim, Luisa Paris, Nif, Nikolai Matov, and Roar. Thank you very much, and also thank you to all our other Patreons. You are awesome.